Welcome to my channel, Real Mission Stories. Under the pale glow of the desert moon, Fort Harland base lay draped in silence, a fortress of steel and secrecy buried deep in the Nevada sands. The wind swept softly across the barren landscape, whispering against hangars and fences as if even nature respected the weight of what lingered inside those walls. At 2:47 a.m., when most of the base was asleep, the operations room still pulsed with life. Screens flickered with live feeds, monitors displayed encrypted transmissions, and a few tired soldiers typed their final reports before the next rotation. Among them was Lieutenant Sarah Collins, a communications officer whose precision and composure were legendary. Her shift was almost over. The hum of machinery had become a familiar lullaby, one she'd learned to trust after years of late nights and high-alert mornings. Her uniform was crisp, her hair neatly tied back, and her eyes, though heavy from exhaustion, remained sharp. Sarah wasn't the kind of officer who made noise, she led by quiet example. Her father's picture sat tucked inside her locker, a Marine who never made it home from Afghanistan. His sacrifice was her compass, the silent reminder that honor wasn't just worn on a uniform, it was lived in the choices no one saw. That night, however, honor was about to be tested in the most brutal way. The door to the operations room slammed open with a force that made everyone flinch. Major Ronald Briggs staggered in, the stench of alcohol unmistakable even before he spoke. His reputation preceded him, a man wrapped in medals and protected by rank, known more for his temper than his leadership. Soldiers feared his wrath and envied his influence. In every corner of the base, whispers followed his name, but they always died before reaching authority. "Lieutenant Collins," he barked, his voice thick with intoxication. "Where's the drone surveillance report from Sector 7? Sarah stood immediately, spine straight, voice steady. "Sir, it's on your desk. Time-stamped and filed per regulation." Briggs narrowed his eyes, his face tightening with drunken rage. "You calling me a liar?" "No, sir," she replied calmly. "Just confirming it's complete." Something in her composure triggered him, perhaps the quiet dignity he lacked. Without warning, his fist lashed out. The impact cracked through the silence like gunfire. Sarah stumbled back, her headset clattering to the floor as her head struck the wall. A gasp rippled through the room, but no one moved. The hum of electronics filled the air again, cold and indifferent. Blood trickled down the side of her face as she steadied herself against the console. Her breath came shallow, but her eyes did not waver. "Major," she said softly, her words trembling but unbroken, "you've just assaulted a fellow officer." Briggs sneered, his grin a cruel twist. "You think anyone will believe you? I own this base." He turned and walked out, laughing under his breath. The soldiers remained frozen, fear anchoring them in silence. But in the shadows, Sergeant Mark Reeves, a technician and longtime friend of Sarah's, clenched his fists. He had seen too much, stayed quiet too long. That night, he decided silence would no longer be his duty. Reeves pulled the security feed and replayed the footage. The sound of the strike made his stomach churn. It was undeniable, every frame, every second, captured in high-definition truth. He uploaded the file to the restricted military channel, marking it as an urgent internal violation report. 2 hours later, alarms whispered across Pentagon servers. The footage made its way through encrypted chains until it landed on the desk of General Matthews, a man known for his integrity and his intolerance for abuse of power. Within hours, an emergency task team was assembled. By dawn, the thrum of helicopter rotors shook the horizon over Fort Harland. 3 black SUVs entered the base gates under heavy escort. Generals Matthews, Ortiz, and Harding stepped out, their faces carved with purpose. The air inside the base grew tight with tension. Soldiers stood at rigid attention as the trio strode toward the command building. No announcement had been made. No warnings given. Everyone knew this was no inspection. It was Judgment Day. Briggs met them at the entrance, his uniform immaculate but his confidence faltering. "Generals," he greeted with forced charm. "If I'd known you were visiting." Matthews cut him off coldly. "You weren't supposed to know." Inside the command center, the generals took their places. Reeves stood beside the main console, his hands shaking as he queued up the footage. Briggs laughed nervously. "This is unnecessary. Some kind of misunderstanding." The video began to play. Silence engulfed the room. The moment Briggs' fist connected, even the machines seemed to stop breathing. When it ended, no one spoke. The image of Sarah bleeding against the wall hung in the air like a ghost. Briggs stammered, this is fake. Edited. You can't. Ortiz stepped forward, his voice like a blade. You're done, Major. You've disgraced your command. The door opened quietly. Sarah entered, her head bandaged, her steps steady despite the pain. She saluted. Lieutenant Sarah Collins, reporting as ordered, sir. Harding met her eyes, his expression softening. You've done your duty, Lieutenant. That's enough. Then he turned to Briggs. Major Ronald Briggs, you are hereby relieved of command and placed under arrest for assault, misconduct, and breach of military ethics. Briggs lunged, shouting, you can't take me down. I built this base. 2 military police officers moved in instantly, forcing him to the ground as his words dissolved into rage. The echo of his defiance faded down the corridor as he was dragged away. The room fell quiet again, this time, not with fear, but with the weight of justice. In the days that followed, investigations revealed everything Sarah had suspected but never voiced. Briggs had a long trail of misconduct buried beneath red tape, harassment claims ignored, reports altered, and funds unaccounted for. His downfall was not just personal, it was systemic. The generals ordered an immediate overhaul of Fort Harland's leadership. Dozens of officers were reassigned. Training procedures were rewritten. A culture built on silence began to crumble. For Sarah, the aftermath was surreal. She hadn't sought recognition, only accountability. But her courage had forced the system to face its own reflection. Months later, she received orders to report to Washington, D.C. The Hall of Honor gleamed under the lights of the Pentagon Auditorium. Officers from across the country filled the seats. When General Matthews called her name, Sarah stepped forward, heart pounding. Lieutenant Sarah Collins, he said, his voice steady and proud, for bravery in the line of duty, for upholding the principles of honor and justice even at personal risk, and for restoring integrity to our ranks, you are hereby awarded the Medal of Valor. As the medal was pinned to her uniform, applause thundered through the hall. Sarah blinked back tears. In her mind, she heard her father's voice again, the words he had told her before his last deployment, courage isn't about fighting enemies overseas. It's about facing the ones inside your own walls. After the ceremony, a young cadet approached her shyly. Ma'am, he said, you made us believe we could speak up too. You showed us that silence isn't loyalty. Sarah smiled gently. Never let fear outrank your conscience, she said. That's how freedom dies. Years later, a documentary aired, The Woman Who Shook the Base. It told her story, the night when truth refused to stay silent. The closing line echoed through millions of hearts. When one act of courage stands against an empire of fear, the world listens. And that was the legacy of Lieutenant Sarah Collins, the officer who faced power with truth and changed the system from within. Because sometimes, the loudest revolution begins not with a gunshot, but with a single voice that refuses to stay quiet.